Hello everyone, today in this video we will fight against the atmosphere of our world around us, as we always try to do on this channel. Today we will discuss two writers, actually one philosopher, one historian, philosopher of history I should say, who, in my opinion, put the best diagnosis for German people and German state. Because German people, German nation is for the last 200 years strictly connected with its state. And first philosopher I want to talk about is of course Friedrich Nietzsche, one of my favorite philosophers, and he considered himself, despite the fact he was German speaker, he considered himself as Polish. There are some genealogical studies that suggest that one of his ancestors was the Polish nobleman with having surname Nietzsche, so some people suggest that the German version of this surname Nietzsche comes from, but some people deny it. But the most important issue is with national identity, I would say self-declaration, because to some extent, to a very large extent, nationality is a matter of choice, and your national identity is a matter of choice, just to be precise. Okay, so Mr. Nietzsche, within his books like Thus Spake Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, and in some others, in some fragments, placed a very good characteristic, very often negative one, of Germans of his days. And these were days when very aggressive militaristic Prussian state was uniting by, according to the quotation of Otto von Bismarck, blood and iron, blood and steel, I should say, the other German-speaking lands. So Mr. Nietzsche accuses Germans of hubris, being narrow-minded, being egoistic, being very much self-centered, and being briefly mentally limited and also disconnected with reality, not looking realistically at the reality around, and being focused too much on power over themselves and over other people, and for many German people, being too much dependent on the will of the state, so power, and be too much obedient to the power of the state. So this is how Nietzsche saw it. Once Germany united, I need to mention, he didn't take German citizenship and he became stateless till the end of his life, because he didn't approve this politics, what was happening. And his characteristic of German people, it's worth to refresh, because it was done in the 19th century, second half it was written, but it's still very valid and actual. And second writer I would like to mention, historian, actually philosopher of history more, was Mr. Spengler, who wrote his famous book Fall of the West. Actually it's tried to find now, it was published, but even in English full version, very often one can find this abridged version by Dr. Werner, later translated into English. The same nowadays it is with other translations into the other languages. One can try to read it in German, but it's tough, at least to me. But this abridged version also gives us good view on Mr. Spengler's notions and ideas and his views on the things, including his own nation. He also wrote several minor works in which he classifies the German person, so German human, as a state person that is completely dependent on the state, does nothing beyond the state, and lives within the borders state creates for him or her. So this is state person, not really independent, not really free, and always subjected to some illusions that can lead to the problems, and illusions of power and greed for power over other nations. Very, I would say, critical, but as history showed, justified view. And one should say that these are, in my opinion, two the best diagnoses of the German nation, German problem, and the problem of the neighbors around them, because neighbors have problems with them because they are disconnected with reality, and from time to time they commit a lot of madness, but they are strong, so neighbors have problems with dealing with their madness, with stopping it at the early stage. And last 2 years also showed that Germany joined the crowd of the nations that followed madness almost completely, also last 2 years, and we will see how it will end up. One can quote the malicious quotation of Winston Churchill, whom I don't like, but one cannot deny that he was a big historical figure. He said that Germany should be bombarded prophylactically each 50 years to avoid problems. I know, very, very nasty and malicious comment. I do not want to take it out of context, but it can show something what people see, how people see Germany from outside. And this is not anti-German movie and so on. This is simply where I see good and very cultural and very professional diagnosis of the characteristics of German people, who are state people, state-owned people, dependent on state, and following the state almost blindly, with some really noble exceptions. So Friedrich Nietzsche, who was called by Goebbels together with Heinrich Heine as the best writer, together with Heinrich Heine, in German language, because Mr. Joseph Goebbels, the boss of National Socialistic propaganda in Germany, said that the best literature in German language was created by these two gentlemen, Mr. Heinrich Heine and Mr. Friedrich Nietzsche. But the funny thing is that, as I mentioned, Friedrich Nietzsche considered himself as Polish, and Mr. Heinrich Heine was German Jewish. For normally thinking people, this is not a problem, because they were great contributors to German literature and to the entire world literature, and their works are still studied and most likely will be studied by many generations to come. But we see how hilarious sometimes German history and German thinking about it and German mind can be. All the best, have a nice day, bye. I encourage you to read the works of Mr. Oswald Spengler and Mr. Friedrich Nietzsche. It's worth it. We will understand our world around us better thanks to this. Take care, bye.